Look
Nick, how
at
you
this.
doing?
We're using technology.
Oh, yes, we're on.
Man, this is absolutely better than just doing the podcast. You get to see somebody.
Isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
I've upgraded recently, actually. The last 4 or 5 have actually had a person in front of me on the screen,
Yeah.
which previously I've never had. It's always, obviously, as you know, it's always been the blank screen of death,
Yeah.
just the audio. But yeah, I've upgraded. I've got internet. I've got better internet, so I can handle the video.
It's crazy. Depending on the day, my internet, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm always using the phone as the secondary. And then literally it'll be the first of the month. I'll do one phone call. My phone's buzzing. You've used 80% of your data plan.
Oh,
And then the rest of the month is over. So how are you doing?
yes. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You're staying safe wherever you are?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, my wife has just finished work on Thursday on the furlough scheme.
Okay.
So she's it was interesting today. I was in the office and she'd set up she'd been working from home for 3 weeks
Sure.
prior to this, and she set up all the stuff to do some calligraphy. She's very arty, so she's got everything set up. And I said, "So what are you going to be doing? You're going to be like in and out on the calligraphy?" She's like, "I'm going to do a 9 to 5, just like I'm at work, because I'm going to miss it."
Oh my
How
goodness.
how many minutes has she been sat there all day? None, not one.
Well, at least she's set up. For me, my big projects have been teaching my boy how to ride his bike, and I taught my daughter, or I should say, I facilitated her teaching herself. And I'm actually thinking about doing a little vlog type deal on how we taught my
Nice.
son because it worked so well. And by the end of today, is only let's call it it's his fourth day really going for it without training wheels, bombing down hills, over curbs, taking off up hills. I mean, just killing it. I think there's like learning how to ride a bike. In there lies the fundamental lessons on really
Yes.
how to learn anything. And
Yeah.
because of the age, you get such a brilliance of what's going inside the youthful mind.
Hmm.
And what I always try to remind myself is even in the adult, that youthful mind, that youthful learner is still there. They just bite their tongue and they don't say the things to their coaches that my son will say, like, "Dad, I've got it. Shut up." Even though our athletes probably at times feel like they wish they could. So
So how old is he? Did you say?
he's 4 now. In
Okay.
fairness, he turns 5 in July, but he's 4, bombing down the street now. He's killing it.
Nice. It's quite early to ride a bike at 4? Or is
Well,
that pretty?
yeah, my daughter didn't learn. We moved here when she was 5. She probably didn't get into it till she was 6.
Hmm.
But the difference between them is she's one of those long lever kids. She's
Okay.
always been in like the 95th percentile for
Okay.
height.
Okay.
And so I just think motor skills for her in general came on later. Whereas my boy, I don't know what percentage, but he's compact.
Hmm.
And so he's taken to the motor skills much quicker. He's doing handstands. He can hold it now for almost 5 seconds. And believe me, if anyone's seen me, I cannot do a handstand. So there's no teaching going on at all. But you know what I learned about the bike riding thing more than anything else is self-belief.
Hmm.
We oftentimes in training and motor learning and coaching, we talk about all the tactics. Even for me, I talk about the cueing, but even cueing will fall short if that person doesn't have self-belief,
Hmm.
personal buy-in, and conviction.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you a quick story about the boy.
Yeah.
So first of all, if I had a third child, I would not give them training wheels. I wouldn't do it. I might wait a little bit longer, but I wouldn't give them training wheels. What do you call them over here?
Stabilizers.
Stabilizers. Yeah.
Stabilizers. Yeah.
And my South African friends call them fairy wheels. So everyone's got
Okay.
different names for them.
Okay.
Okay. And they call them fairy wheels because the fairy takes the wheels away. That's the parents' quick trick to
Ah.
get them
Okay.
riding on 2 wheels, but not bearing the burden of having to tell them we're the ones taking it away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my boy kept wanting to go back to the training wheels. And who wouldn't?
Uh-huh.
Right? Like I'm riding my bike around the neighborhood. I'm keeping up on the walk with my sister. Why would I go
What?
to this alternative that I keep
Yeah.
falling over?
Yeah.
Right? So in terms of the value proposition, it really wasn't there. So the only value was, hey, well, my sister can do it, so I've got to be able to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And so we fed off that. And he's having a session on the 2-wheelers, and he just wasn't committed. It wasn't because he couldn't do it, but he didn't want to follow through. And so I said to him, I said, Madden, do you still wear diapers? And he looks up at me, and I said in a very kind, not condescending, but I asked him, Madden, do you still wear diapers? And he looked at me and said, I don't pee in my pants. And I said, exactly. I said, exactly. You don't pee in your pants. If I let you continue to wear diapers, or if you chose to continue to wear diapers, what would you do? Mm-hmm. And he said, I'd pee in my pants. I said, okay, perfect. Mm-hmm. So if you keep putting these training wheels back on your bike, are you ever going to learn how to ride it? And mind you, his head was down. He was huffing. And he looks up at me. And almost like, man, you've got me. He picked up the training wheels. It's a true story. My wife got on video. Walked over to the garbage bin outside, threw them in the bin, walked over to the bike and said, I'm going to ride you. Mm-hmm. And that was the first day that he rode on two wheels, probably over about 15 meters before Dad let him fly into the curb. But it just went to show that if that self-belief isn't there, mm-hmm. none of the learning and the learning tactics after that can follow. Yeah. So such an important quality that oftentimes we don't talk enough about.
Interesting that you use that little story about the nappies, about the diapers.
Yeah.
Because that kind of plays into the child's mind of like wanting to grow up, not wanting to be seen as the baby.
It does.
It's interesting. Yeah.
it is a little bit manipulative, but it was in full view.
Of course.
The question was in full view of him to deal with in the way he felt was best for him.
Yeah. So. Nice. One thing I chatted to you about when we were over in Belfast, which seems an age ago now, wowza, was the DJing. And I've just seen JB pop up on there talking about your DJing. And I think I asked you about that. And you said, I haven't been doing it for a while. So when you popped up on the live a few weeks ago, I was like, yes, he's back. When did the DJing start? Sorry, when did the DJing start? Where was that? Where was the spark?
Well, when I started running the mentorships out in Exos, or the mentorships for Exos, and we started doing them in Germany. Mm-hmm. I have some friends who live out in Cologne in Germany, and I'll never forget the first time I went there. They took me out to this proper nightclub that was house only. It wasn't, the hip hop, pop music type stuff we get in the US. And I was just enamored by this sound. I mean, of course, I knew what house music was and electronic music, but just to go into a club and feel like the DJ was telling a story, mm-hmm. as silly as that sounds.
No, absolutely.
When you go to a lot of clubs in the U.S., it's just they're randomly changing songs. It's just attention getters again and again and again. Whereas DJing, I feel in Europe, especially in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, where it's been one of the best experiences I've ever had because of the music, let me be clear, is that there's a lot of there's storytelling going on. And I don't know, I've always loved music. I used to freestyle rap in college just for fun. So I did a lot of musical things and loved music, but I never played an instrument. And my wife was like, you are so boring. Mm-hmm. You need to find a way to detach from work. And so I'll never forget, I came back from that and I was enamored by the music. So I downloaded some songs. And then my wife and I went and saw Zed live. And this was when Zed was in his prime with Clarity. And we had never gone to a DJ concert, but I just saw the whole spectacle was amazing. So I'll never forget a week later, I think this might have been 2013, maybe. I went and I researched it for a week mm-hmm. or two. I got the basic equipment you needed to record and make your own DJ mixes. And I studied it, DJ Tech Tools, read all the blogs as if I was learning something like your wife on calligraphy for the first time. And as it happened, 30 days later, it was Halloween. Someone's DJ dropped out on them. And they said, hey, will you come over and do this for us? And I'm thinking in my mind, this is crazy. But at the same time, I said, what's the best way to learn? To teach others. Mm-hmm. To teach others in a DJing sense is to DJ. And after I did that, I was hooked. And I've just been making mixes under the handle Mover on SoundCloud since then, just for my own enjoyment. And if other people enjoy it, great. And I thought, what better time to maybe get out of my comfort zone and get back into something I love than this COVID-19 scenario and do these DJ sets, every Saturday. So, and last week we raised some money and we're just going to keep doing it, having fun, because I think that's what it's about. And I need I'm cognizant I need to show the world more than what I just do in coaching, because if I'm going to be a person talking about coaching, I need to also show the humanity of what it requires to be a coach. And I feel showing some of those attributes is helpful in my own personal journey and the journey I'm trying to help others be on.
That's really interesting. It's funny when we actually watched the video. So one of the videos that you put on live a couple of weeks ago, and revisited one of the videos that you put on the day about your course,
Yeah.
and it got me thinking. I wonder how much the story and the telling of the story through the music is actually linked in with you and what people know you as. So it's interesting that you brought that up before I even mentioned it. So that's really cool. How important do you think that is to show people more about you? Because I know that's quite difficult for people. And has it been a bit of a journey for you in terms of, I know journey, a bit cliche, but in terms of moving through your career, and now you feel it's a time, okay, I'm known for this, but I also want a different aspect of me to be known as well?
Mm. Okay, so it's a fantastic question, and one I actually been thinking about a lot lately. So I'll give you a couple anecdotes. One, I'm pissed because I can't remember the guy's name. He interned at Exos under me years ago, but he put up a comment. He said, I feel all strength coaches got into the field because the gym allowed them to change who they were into who they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some might find that a very controversial statement, and I'm not personally stating whether or not I agree with it. But again, let me say it. Strength coaches get into this world because we can go into a place and change who we are from where we are to where we want to be. And as I started thinking about that, I was like, well, for me personally, this guy nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never thought about it that way, but absolutely nailed it. Like many, I went into the gym because I wanted to be better at sport. I wasn't happy with my body. I wanted to push myself. And I even remember saying when I was 16, I want to look on the outside how I feel on the inside.
How's that?
And I'll be straight. I still struggle with that to this day of knowing, well, who exactly are you? At the same time, I've gotten very comfortable, and I actually think it's served me, knowing that who you are is an evolving idea. And in fact, to limit yourself by saying this is exactly who I am is by its very nature a fixed mindset. And I think funny, I downloaded all my tweets from, I think I joined in 2009. And the stuff I was saying back then, I'm like, I would not dream of saying that today.
What kind of stuff are you saying, Nick?
By its very testament, it shows that who you are is this constantly evolving thing. So I've actually gotten comfortable and embraced this idea that we are and should be ever evolving. And I think the reality is, as strength coaches, I do spend a lot of time when it comes to presenting and coaching. I have a certain way I want to be. I'm not going to pretend that that's not the case. And I think that over time, that way you want to be and the way you are starts to meld into one thing. And maybe that is this evolving sense of personal identity, which is a lifelong pursuit. Mm-hmm. And so I think all I'm trying to do is allow that amalgamated personal identity of the Nick at home, the Nick at work, which I'm trying to create as one, to come to the fore. And music is a huge part of the Winkelman family, a huge part of me. And that's one example that I want to be sharing more with the world.
Mm-hmm. Has it come at a specific time? Has something triggered it? I'm guessing it's just been in evolution. I know there's and this is not to sound anything apart from what it is, but there's the book coming out, and you've been in Ireland for a couple of years now. Is it a point where you think, okay, I'm ready to show this, not the real person, because that makes it sound as everything else is not real, but
yeah.
you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, showing the other tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a number of colliding variables.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very focused on goal achievement for as long as I can think. And for me, it was very important to go through an extended period of incubation. And that, again, goes back to personal identity. I've always had issues, for example, presenting on topics that I had not earned the right to present on. But when I took the job at Athletes Performance in 2006, I was being asked to run these week-long mentorships where I was 21. I wasn't an expert on any of the topics.
Mm-hmm.
And even 5-6 years into doing it, I could speak on all of them, but probably maybe 2 or 3 were really in my wheelhouse. So inevitably, I learned to understand the content really, really well, study it really well, but also to be an actor, to make sure that once I knew my script, I presented it with the energy, enthusiasm, and clarity that I knew Mark Verstegen expected. Okay. But as time has gone on, I have gotten rid of the topics that I don't feel I'm an expert in. And going through a PhD forces you to do that. You become viscerally aware of what you do not know, and credit becomes massively important. And so as I've moved forward, I've focused on just those authentic pieces to me. And so that incubation period is coming to an end on April 24th when my book comes out.
Mm-hmm.
I have dedicated over 15 years in the trenches, studying, reading, applying, repeat, recycle over and over again. And I've accumulated as many hours presenting and being thus in the limelight of critique as much as I have coaching, which for me has added tremendous value to understanding of what effective coaching looks like. And so, yeah, in part, Rob, I want to share everything I've got.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is just part of it, because I am on a mission to, as best I can, ensure that never again we have an athlete who comes home crying because their coach frickin' took them down in a training session in front of everyone. I don't want to see people come home frustrated because they're not performing well in competition and their coach takes it out of them on a Saturday morning in a film session. I want to see a world where coaches, again, personal trainers, therapists are celebrated even more than they already are, as teachers are celebrated as being just that, amazing teachers. And as I put in a tweet the other day, you remember how a coach coached you far more than what they coached. And that's what my book is about. That's what my mission is about. And I want to share, I believe I have to share all of me to make that difference.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I always forget this, but I want to encourage people who are tuning in to ask questions, whether it's about this or anything else. I always forget to say that. It's really interesting because when I read that tweet and just earlier on, and it brings me back to teachers at school for me, and which ones I gravitated towards and which lessons I liked. And it's exactly the same. I remember the history teacher. I used to love history. I still do love history. And he used to be getting on the table with his ruler as a sword.
Yes.
And it was like, this is brilliant. He was like throwing things up and chopping it, or not actually chopping it, but using the ruler to look as if it's chopping. And it was the way he taught history, whether it be Vikings or Second World War or whatever it was, just made me fall in love with history. And as soon as I read that on Instagram from you, it made me think exactly that. And yeah, really interesting. How big was it? How big a deal was it for you to have that higher purpose? It's not just a book that lets you get your thoughts on paper. There's the bigger picture. There's this, I suppose, a power that's bigger than you, a thought that's bigger than you in terms of, I know you mentioned like just then about not having kids come home crying. Like, that's quite a big purpose. That's not just, I'm going to write a book because I've done a few presentations on this and I can accumulate into one resource. It's bigger than that. It seems really bigger than that for you.
If I didn't have this skin, I would explode nearly minute by minute on a daily basis. The level of drive, I've always said it. I feel that I'm in a prison of passion, and I'm an individual that I like to take that passion and I like to narrow it and nail something. You know, I don't want to do 10 things 1 inch deep. I want to do one thing, 10 miles deep. And that's what this has been. And I pursue perfection. I don't want to say I'm a perfectionist because I don't believe that you can ever really true perfection, and perfection is a subjective thing. But for me, the book, yeah, the book had to be as close of a physical manifestation of that higher power, of that bigger thing. I want people to read the book and be physically moved. It's a book about movement, but I want them to read the words, and I want the words to come inside their soul, their mind, their body, and physically change them, affect them, like many of the great books that I have. So literally every I, every T, every image, the formatting, nothing has gone without immense scrutiny for the purpose of providing an experience to others that I believe will transcend time.
Superb. We've got one more question through. I love questions coming through. Does your book touch on influencing other decision authorities within the organization?
Really, really great question.
Yeah.
You know, when you sit down to write a book about communication, it doesn't take you very long to realize that, wow, communication is more than one thing. There's the context of the communication. There's the who of the communication insofar as authority versus someone at your level, below you, an athlete, whatever it might be. And thus, when I sat down to write the language of coaching, it goes back to my earlier point. I knew I had to be 1 inch wide and go 10 miles deep to truly ensure that the reader came out of the experience better than when they came in, with a real life tool they could bring forward. So the short answer to the question is no. I do not specifically address, let's say, communication tactics within an off-field team. I do not get into how to give a rousing pregame speech. I do not get into how to give, bad news to an athlete if they're cut or not selected. The book focuses on a core science underpinning all communication. So I think many people will be able to draw those analogies from the book to those other scenarios. I mean, we all read books in our industry on business, but we're not necessarily, well, we're in a business, but the examples they use are not necessarily our examples, but we can copy and paste them quite easily to our context. So I'd like to think that the book as a whole will copy and paste to virtually any communication scenario. Things like attention, memory, how we phrase sentences to capture the visuals in a mind, to keep them connected to a story, to change behavior. These are all topics that I discuss, but I discuss them through the lens of teaching movement. Movement is, if you would, the focus, the artistic form of communication that we center on. But so many of the principles to talk about cueing obviously transcend all forms of communication. And to be honest with you, I'm really curious to see what other industries and what other contexts people find value from the book. I'm excited for that because I'm so focused on the context in which the book was created, which is in coaching movement.
We'll come to Patrick's question in a second about external cues and analogies. But how difficult was that for you in moving across in the States to just touching on that question that we just answered? How difficult was that for you moving across in the States to Ireland, but also having different nationalities within the organization? So am I right in thinking there's an Aussie above you? Yep. So that's another one. Yeah. So how difficult was that for you?
The irony was, 2016, I signed the contract to write the book, The Language of Coaching. And now I leave my sport, American football. And as we know, every sport has its own lingo, its own subculture of vernacular and slang. So I have to learn that. Obviously, we come over here in the English that the English speak and the English that the Irish speak. Just the difference between the English that the people in Cork versus Limerick speak.
Absolutely.
All very different, very different. So you have the sport lingo, you have the local lingo, and then you're right. I'll never forget my boss, David Nusifora, kept saying, "Oh yeah, I'll talk to you the Savo." I'm like, the Savo? The Savo? Does this guy want an avocado? I'm not quite sure. And I kid you not, I went online and looked up Australian slang because I had a number of Aussies that I work with and work for. And sure enough, the Savo, this afternoon. And so amalgamate all those together. I was struck by the fact that, okay, Nick, now is your time to put all those principles you talk about to the test. Whether it's learning how to, as I like to say, steal language from another person in a meeting so that I can reflect that language back to them to increase understanding. Whether it was my ability to look at eye contact and body language when I was coaching and cueing on the pitch to see if people were actually connecting with what I was saying. It was my ability to use self-deprecation and humor, which they love a lot more over here than we do in the States.
Yeah.
But using it to good effect to get buy-in with my players to say, listen, I'm not taking myself too seriously. I'm the American football dope over here. I need you as much as you need me. And inevitably, I had to curate a whole host of new cues and analogies and phrases. And even when my mom comes over here, she's like, man, you guys are speaking so differently. And I think it's a natural human ability to adapt to your environment. But like my son learning to ride his bike, you have to be open to it. And I most certainly was. So it's funny, in chapter 6 of the book called Going Analog, it's about analogies and how we compare this to that. I have a little riff on all the learnings from moving to Ireland. And I know when I wrote it, it was a pinnacle moment in the book because it certified for me that what I am sharing is transferable. And for me, that's important. Authenticity and true life applicability was key. And so moving here solidified and strengthened my views that the book is based on because of that.
I'm going to just turn the light on because I'm looking like I'm close to passing out here. Yeah, just coming back to Patrick's question, does the book include illustrations of external cues / analogies? Question answered.
Now this I can happily say yes. This part of the book probably took as long as writing it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people on this understand about publishing. I knew nothing. The first thing is Human Kinetics, who's the publisher, 95% of their books, they go commission. And what I mean by that is they have a topic, they find an author and bring them in. And fantastic. So mine was fortunately one of the few that it was not anywhere on their radar. And so when it came in, it was going to be black and white, flat, typical first edition. By the end, they had every single designer working on the book simultaneously. The cover is matte black now, textured, because I want people to have a real experience. Full color first edition. So there are the imagery throughout the book. I cannot give enough credit to our design team at Human Kinetics. I designed the whole thing in PowerPoint, and for those that know me, that's not surprising to anybody. But then they brought the whole thing. They brought the whole thing to life, and it has this comic book dark edge to it. I wanted it to feel graphic because at the end of the day, great language is visual. It draws you in. It moves you before you've even moved. And I wanted the book to tell the story that the book is trying to teach you to tell. And so what we did is this. First 6 chapters are giving you the skill, helping you develop the skill, giving you the fishing pole. Chapter 7, which is called the roadmap, is an entire chapter, Rob, on behavior change. So I physically put a chapter in the book that will lay out, i.e. the roadmap, that people can use to integrate these behaviors, these cueing communication behaviors, into their practice. Because this is not something you do overnight. It's like telling someone, okay, here's your diet, good luck. We know how often that works. And so this is a communication diet. And we're looking to change certain elements of your communication, right? Your French fries for your fruit. Well, we have our version of that. But just like a good diet, guess what? Do you inevitably get to reintegrate all foods and all communication tactics? Absolutely. But simply we teach you how to organize it. But then here's the fun part. I don't want you to starve on your way to building that fishing pole. So we have strong cueing, fast cueing, and powerful cueing. 3 chapters covering 27 movements. Each movement is based on our coaching communication loop. And within each of those, there are two different categories of external cues, an entire section of analogies. If you can think back to the movie Mary Poppins, both the recent one, but my favorite, the original.
The original, yeah.
Do you remember the scene where they jump into the picture?
Oh, it rings a bell. Yeah.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
have a live human
Yeah.
jumping into this fictional world, and these two things interact.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, that's what I want this to feel like. I want it to have edge and graphic, but I want to see a real person who is performing a real movement, which we shot, but I want it to be inside the world that we're trying to create in their mind. So we bring over, I think it's like 110 analogies to life on page. And people can go to Amazon right now and preview some of them, but what Human Kinetics has done, Rob, is unreal. So long-winded answer to a short question, but I want to stress that we use the principles the book is based on to write the book, and thus it is very visual.
Mm-hmm. Superb. Another question come in, so I'm going to jump straight on that. From your experience, would you say the difference in skill acquisition between a constraint-based approach and external cueing / analogies, or will you put them together as one and the same?
They are one and the same. They are one and the same. And it's a beautiful question because, like many things in many industries, we like to be polarizing. And so for those tuning in who are not familiar with these terms, constraints are basically, it's a fancy word for very precise drills. And so what is a constraint? A constraint is a nonverbal way to change movement. A cue is a verbal way to change movement. Are there bad cues? Most certainly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written my book. Are there bad constraints? Yes. And that book should be written as well. So it's not a matter of one being better than the other. It's about better drills, or said differently, better environments and better cues, better ways to communicate. Now, where do they have overlap? Where is there a commonality? Simple. When you use a constraint, you are trying to change how the person focuses. So let's give an example. You love football. You were in football. When you do a small-sided game, you restrict the pitch size. And then let's say you change a rule. You can only touch the ball twice. You dribble it twice before you have to pass, for example. By the very nature of that, you have to then solve that problem. You have to figure out how to get into space, keep your touches accurate, and then find someone in the open field. By the very nature of that problem solving, and you tell me, you played, Rob, does that change how you think? Does that change how you focus? Does that change how you approach?
Absolutely. I couldn't do it. So very
yep. Okay. So a constraint by its very nature changes the way you focus. If it doesn't change the way you focus, you won't move any differently, because movement follows on from intention, and intention is a synonym of focus. So call that an indirect way of changing focus. And it's something that we're changing in the environment. So by its very nature, Rob, what do constraints do? They invite an external focus. I don't know if anyone's thought of it that way, but that's exactly how they operate. So what is an external cue doing? An effective external cue isn't telling you how to solve the problem. If I tell you to explode off the ground, or to watch the belly button of that attacker trying to get around you, I haven't told you what to do with your body. I haven't solved the problem. I've given you a nudge in the same way that a constraint gives you a nudge. And so it's up to the practitioner to figure out, in this scenario, do we allow the constraint to roll on? See if they can problem solve on their own. Many athletes still don't solve the problem, even with the constraint. So if they're failing, then how can we get them to thrive? Let's give them an external focus or an analogy that draws their attention to the right feature of the movement or the environment, and then allow them to crack on. That's why coaches are guides. I'm not walking for them, but I'm saying, listen, if you go 10 steps to the right, you're going to walk off a cliff. So I suggest you turn just a little bit to your left. That's what great cues do. That's what great constraints do. They operate on the shared plane of focus, though. It's simply using the tactic that best serves the moment and the movement. But ultimately, they're usually used in a pairing more often than not.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about analogies, and it comes back to the little story you told at the start with your son and the diaper and the nappy. And it relates back to an Instagram post again, I think, that you may have put about making the analogy personal or reflective of that person's experience and who they are. How important is that for coaches to learn to be able to do that and make the athlete feel like it's about them and it's coming from a place that they know something about? Because you wouldn't use the diaper story with a 25-year-old because it's not, they're past that. So how important is that?
Listen, it's everything. And you know what the old adage we say, get to know your athlete?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You know, in the book, I spend a lot of time talking about how do you start to live inside your athlete's narrative? How do you coach them from their perspective? A little footnote on that phraseology. I just finished the book, Never Split the Difference, which is one of the best books I have ever read, full stop. Okay? And it's about this FBI negotiator. And he talks about, and convincingly, I should say, you have to negotiate from their context. Mm-hmm. You have to negotiate from their frame of reference. You have to negotiate in their mind so they come up with what you are trying to negotiate them towards, which is simply nothing more than reframing and the use of motivational interviewing techniques to guide the person to come up with the solution you want them to come up with, but without telling them. And so when we look at that, I think you have to get into their state of mind, because to be understood, you need to first understand. I've been very fortunate to start to slowly work with a gentleman named Julian Treasure, which has the top 5 most viewed TED Talk of all time on communication. And that's his quote. To be understood, you have to understand. Because even now in this conversation, based on the way you listen to me, it's going to impact how I listen to you. And think about that from a communication perspective. If you're one of those people that talks, interrupts, and I am guilty of that at times, I do know that, other people tend to mirror that. It's like, well, if you're not going to give me the common courtesy, why would I you? And so the very fact of it is we have to become good listeners to get inside of what I like to call their language locker, to understand their internal narrative. And then I can use that information in a mirror. I mirror it right back to them. So a story then to apply the principle. I was a personal trainer, and this was one of my earliest clients. And I've told this story before, but it's such a powerful one to apply to illustrate this point. And we were going through the normal intake. And, you know, who are you? What are you about? What are your goals? This, that, and the other. My goal is to be to my son what the Superman on his wall is. And I kind of gave him a look. He's like, you have to understand, I'm separated from my wife. I don't see my son all the time. And he's the most important thing to me in the world. And he has this poster of Superman on his wall. And he loves Superman. And I want to be my kid's Superman. That's what he said to me.
Wow. And
I love that, because so many of our clients and athletes, that's actually why they do it. They don't do it for the rings and the money and, you know, the fame. And don't get me wrong, many of them do. This person cares. And so it was actually a personal trainer who I was working with at Equinox who said this to me for the first time. I said, what have you gotten out of improving your coaching and your communication and your cueing? And she says to me, better relationships. I was blown away. Mm-hmm. Because I think I had always known that, but I didn't fully appreciate it. And so even though the book is about cueing, and that feels very one-to-one, strictly related just to teaching better movement, I'm going to challenge everybody that it's so much more than that, which is why I put a chapter on that topic, because it is about building better relationships because language ultimately is our means of connecting with one another.
Interesting. Very good. Very good. And I was going to come back to the PowerPoints, by the way. And I've mentioned this to you before. PowerPoints absolutely on point. Do you do them yourself? Do you design them yourself? Or have you got someone else to do them?
No, I do all the design. Again, I have to give thanks where and credit where credit's due. When I started at Exos, again, 21 running mentorships, week-long mentorships. Rob, there's a lot of presentations.
Yes.
And I think like anybody, you present often enough, you want to start to freshen things up. So it was just a natural evolution over the years where I just started paying attention to the design. And rightly or wrongly, I always felt that I wanted the slides to be as precise, effective, and as powerful as what I was delivering, hopefully, on stage. And it took me many, many years, and I haven't done graphic design or any of that, but I stick with it. And for me, kind of like DJing, I see PowerPoint as an art form, and it provides a poor man's way of Adobe software and graphic design. It actually allows you to do so many things. So I love it, and you included. When people come up to me and say, "What software do you use for your presentations?" And I say PowerPoint, because at the end of the day, presenting and coaching are the same. We've got to be storytellers. And I think if I can use language that's visual, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. So let me bring it to life behind me.
On that point, you've got a course, a short online course, which is the lead into the book.
Yes.
Just before I let you go, where can people get a hold of the course? When's the book out? And where can people get it?
Okay. So the course, first of all, it's a 2-hour mini course. It's completely free. There's no double clicking here. You go to thelanguageofcoaching.com. You have 2 different opportunities on there to subscribe. The second you subscribe, you're going to get an instant email. The first link on there is to the YouTube video, which is on a private link. And then the second one is to download the slides. Okay, so that's available to everyone right now. And I will say that on April 21st, I'm going to be doing a live Q&A webinar using Zoom webinar. And so for those that subscribe, they're going to get the first opportunity to join that. Okay, so subscribers will get that piece as well. It doesn't cost anyone anything. In this time right now, I absolutely believe we need to be helping where we can. And so that's why I'm doing this, in addition to the fact that, yes, there is something with a cost coming. It is the book. It's the only thing I've ever put out that costs something, and I do believe people will find it's worth it. So it's coming out on April 24th. Now, technically, the way that works is Human Kinetics will get it on April 24th, which means, give or take a few days, you'll be able to buy it from Human Kinetics, the print version of the book, so to speak, probably until end of April. So just stay tuned on that. But it can be pre-ordered right now, and the Kindle version iBook will be available as soon as it is, so April 24th. And again, it's The Language of Coaching, the Art and Science of Teaching movement.
Excellent. And people can pre-order from Amazon?
They can pre-order from Amazon.
Okay.
They can pre-order on iBooks right now.
Yep. Superb. Excellent. How's your work situation at the minute? Are you all working? Obviously, everyone's working from home.
Yeah. Listen, this is testament to Irish rugby. It has been remarkably impressive how quickly the entire organization has mobilized itself. We're all shooting videos for the players. All provincial coaches are meeting on a fortnightly basis. We got, again, we're a community of competitors. So just tomorrow, we're going to have all leadership, all 4 provinces on one call, talking about, preparation right now and what it'll look like when we come back together. And that's credit to David Nusifora. Our head of medical, Rod McLaughlin, is doing an amazing job keeping us informed. So I can't say enough good things about this organization.
Awesome. Just snuck in there. Are they going to print it in Spanish?
They will. I think they have something like 8 languages in the queue. But the way it works is they release the book rights to the translators. They have no control over how quickly it's done. But all those languages should be out within the next 1 to 2 years.
Awesome. I'm going to let you go. Get on with your evening. When's the next
Cheers.
DJ set? Weekend? The weekend?
Saturday, 5 p.m. Irish, whatever that is, 12 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern. Yes, absolutely.
A bit more 80s hip hop was requested
Oh,
from Coach
nice.
House. So I
Oh,
do take
nice.
requests, but I'm a fairly stingy DJ. I know the kind of music I like. So
And who is it on the phone? Is it your wife?
it's my wife, and then you
Okay.
usually see a cameo from my son doing
Yeah.
his 5 second handstand or asking for something. So it's pretty crude, but we're spinning live. It's real music, and yeah, people should join us. We had 420 views last week.
Amazing.
Listen, it's good fun for the whole family.
Of course. Great stuff. Thanks very much, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, brother.